the core of my work for 40 years has been helping people understand that clutter is postponed decisions.
How's everyone doing today? This is Optimal Instinct with Trish, and I am Trish Tagley. I am a business efficiency expert who works with people that want their clients to stay longer, pay more, and refer often by up to 35% while improving team morale. It can be done, folks. Today we have as our guest, Barbara Hemphill. Barbara began as a pioneer in the organizing and productivity industry 40 years ago with a $7 ad in a New York City newspaper. Her passion is helping individuals and organizations eliminate physical, digital, and emotional clutter to create a productive environment, an intentional setting in which everyone can accomplish their work and enjoy their lives. Often referred to as the Paper Tiger Lady because of her best-selling book, Taming the Paper Tiger, based on the premise that clutter is postponed decisions. Barbara has appeared on Good Morning America, The Today Show, The View, CNN Nightly News, and in publications including USA Today, New York Times, Fast Company, Reader's Digest, Real Simple, and Guideposts. Her most recent book is Less Clutter More Life. She is an editor for Formidable Woman magazine. An interesting tidbit about Barbara is that she grew up on a farm in Nebraska and went to a one-room country school for 9 years. Currently, she lives in Raleigh, North Carolina. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you very much, Trish. I'm delighted to be with you.
Thank you so much for being on the show. So let's get right to the questions.
Okay.
So what is the problem that you solve?
One of the biggest challenges that people face in the world today is being overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we're overwhelmed is because of clutter. Clutter comes in many forms. We're certainly aware of physical clutter. Many of the listeners, I'm sure, have seen the Netflix show, The Magic of Tidying Up. Mm-hmm. And that's been big a rage because clutter is such an issue. And it also comes in digital now. Mm-hmm. We have email is the biggest productivity sucker in business today. Mm-hmm. But there's also emotional and spiritual clutter. Mm-hmm. And my newest book, Less Clutter More Life, the premise is that the physical and the digital clutter is a result of the emotional and spiritual clutter.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so what are the common mistakes you think that people make when they're trying to solve this clutter problem?
Well, the core of my work for 40 years has been helping people understand that clutter is postponed decisions. Mm-hmm. That I learned that from clothes closets. Mm-hmm. If you look in your clothes closet and it's stuffed, it's because you haven't decided whether you're really going to lose the 10 pounds you need to lose to get back into that favorite skirt again, or the exercise equipment that looks so enticing on Home Shopping Network, but it hasn't been out of the closet for a month or maybe 6 months. And then there's the candlesticks you got from Aunt Sally, and you love Aunt Sally, but those candlesticks are not really your style. Mm. But if she came for Thanksgiving dinner and you had them on the table, she'd be so happy. And then same thing's true of the pile of papers. You know, the papers that accumulate on the kitchen counter, and you go to cook dinner at night, and the papers the kids brought home from school and your spouse dumped on the table in the mail and stuff like that. And then one day you've had enough and you said, okay, this is it. Today I'm going to clean this up. And you pick up the first piece of paper and look at it and think of any number of reasons why today isn't a good day to deal with this piece of paper. And you pick up the second and the third and the fourth. And before you know it, the pile that was on one side of the counter is now on the other side of the counter, and it's time to go to soccer practice or whatever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Same thing's true with email. Open, close, open, close, open, close. The next thing you know, you've been in front of email for 45 minutes and you haven't done anything except you feel more depressed about how far behind you are. So that postponing the decisions is really what causes it. Why do we postpone the decisions? It's because of emotion. Mm-hmm. And that emotion is usually fear. In my book, Less Clutter More Life, it talks about the stumbling blocks. Mm-hmm. And they're all related to fear. Fear that we'll make a mistake. Fear that we'll offend someone. Mm-hmm. fear that we will miss an opportunity, fear that we'll make a mistake, fear that we'll want it back, fear that we won't be responsible. Just recently,
fear of disappointing someone.
Exactly. I said offending someone. That's a really big one. The candlesticks we talked about. I love Aunt Sally. But the problem we have to think about that is that fear is preventing us from being all that we have the potential of being. We're taking care of someone else when we're doing that instead of taking care of ourselves. And so really making that decision. So one of the questions you want to ask yourself is, what's the worst possible thing that would happen if I did get rid of this? And then you play that out and then you say, is that something I'm willing to live with? And it doesn't have a right or wrong answer. One of the things we have is saying what I call the cost factor, which is you can keep everything you want if you're willing to pay the price. And the price is time, space, money, and energy. And only you can make that decision. And energy is a big part of it too. It's like keeping things takes a lot of energy. One of the things that our company does is we go into companies that are relocating. Research shows that 80% of what we keep, we never use. Well, it's true of companies as well. So we go in and have productivity days where we make it an event. We give prizes and we set up a shredding station and a recycling station and a trash to treasure station. And then my favorite one is a staging area, which is where you put something, an employee says, this belongs to the company and it's in my office, but I don't need it and I don't know what to do with it. And so you put it in the staging area, and then at the end of the day, management can come in and decide what to do with it. And I did one company with 400 employees, and we did 12 days. So every employee participated for 12 days. At the end of the 12 days, we had shredded alone 33,000 pounds of paper. They were also getting ready to change servers. So we spent the morning with physical, and we spent the afternoon of the day with digital. We deleted almost one half of the files on their server. So the IT people were thrilled because their job just got cut in half.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I noticed that when I'm, like you were mentioning, the spiritual side and energy, I noticed that when I am grappling with something, I tend to not pay attention to my surroundings because there's too much on my mind, and I leave things in places where they shouldn't be. I take the mail, I don't read it, I just put it. I'm just like, I can't. But, I am a pretty organized person. So whenever that thing that I'm grappling with is done with, then I see the mountain that I have. I'm like, okay, time to get rid of this. Then I go through and clean everything up, and then I'm done. But that's who I am.
Well, you brought up a very interesting point, Trish, which is one of the things that we deal with all the time. We have what we call, what is organized? Something is organized if you can answer yes to these 4 questions.
Okay.
Question number 1 is, does it work? Question number 2, do you like it? Question number 3, does it work for the other people it impacts? And question number 4 is, can you recover quickly? That's what you just described. You, in certain circumstances, you have what I call circumstantial disorganization.
Yes.
But it's not a problem. You know what to do with it. The problem is when it gets that way and you don't know what to do with it.
Yes. Which is, as I've observed from my corporate life, there's quite a bit of people that don't know what to do.
Oh, it's absolutely true. And if you think about it, I'm working on a book right now. We're doing an ebook first called Taming the Gmail Tiger, because Gmail is the most used. And then we're working on a book called Taming the Digital Tiger. And the premise of the book is that this whole digital mess, and we really do, we have a digital mess. It's getting worse all the time. And it comes from the fact that when email was introduced, companies spent hundreds of thousands of dollars putting in these new programs and $0 training employees how to use it. And setting up protocols. So I was with a group of lawyers in New York City recently, and I was hired to talk about organizing their email. And one of the things we talked about was that a company should have protocol for email. And the protocol should be things like reply all should be banned.
Yes.
And every email should have a subject line. You should teach people how to create subject lines so the recipient can look at the subject line and know what it's about, know exactly what it's about. And that you should only put one topic in an email, because if you put 3 topics in an email,
Optimal Instinct with Trish is brought to you by TrishTagley.com and the book Everyone Knows You Suck, Bad Boss Stories, A Succinct Guide, available now in both ebook and print format on Amazon.com. And the C's Value Model that supports your desire for client relationships that are more profitable, more productive, and more likely to refer. To understand more about the C's model, go to clientvaluedemo.com.
what's likely to happen is the person will reply. You might get an answer to 2, but you probably won't get the 3rd one. And then you don't know how to organize it, because where do you put it under there? It makes it very difficult. And just statistically, our attention span is very short. So we're much more likely to get a good response to 3 short emails than we are to 1 long email.
Yeah.
But very few companies have protocol.
Yeah, you're right. I've been brought in, I worked in project management operations, and I was hired a lot of times because I had a lot of these processes and protocol that made the work easier for the people that I was working with. So One of the things that I always implemented was a subject line structure. Excellent. So it would be that for me, I would use the company name, the project, and then what was required of the client. Okay, so an action. So respond, or, it's whatever. Right now, all I can think of is respond, but let's say it's that. So when the client got it, right away they understood what that was about and whether they should answer it right away or they could take their time. So that was the one benefit. But the second benefit is that when you sorted your mail to file it away, right, because projects do end, we hope, or you should be charging your clients a little more.
Right.
You could sort your mail and then file that under that client and project folder. Okay. So I never had, my email inbox was never full because I was able to sort by the company, and then I would see the projects and I could move everything so easily into the folders. And so I totally agree with you that in this digital age, if we don't have certain protocol, we tend to just have, I don't know, thousands of email that it's like, where's that? And everybody attaches things to email, which is another thing.
The interesting thing, the reason I got called to the attorney's office was they had a thing where the emails would be automatically deleted after 90 days.
Oh.
So then the lawyers would get in trouble because they wouldn't get things filed, and then they'd go back later and it would be gone. And one of the things that they said was, well, dealing with the email is not billable time. Well, one of the things we figured out was that if they got the emails so that they could group them by client, and then they filed them while they were working on the client files, they now are billable time. It's like, yes. Oh, yes, I never thought about that.
So there you go. We are totally on the same page. So, okay, you've mentioned a couple of tips, but is there another tip that maybe you could provide our listeners for organization?
Well, I'd like to provide them a resource where they can get some very specific information. You can go to productiveenvironment.com/scorecard. We all love to measure ourselves.
Yes, absolutely.
And so you can measure how you're doing on productivity, and you can have that information to yourselves. But then that will entitle you to a complimentary 30-minute discovery session with one of our consultants that can help you put together a game plan to help you identify where you should start on this clutter journey, where it is that would get. One of the questions that will be on it, which is a very important question everyone should ask, is what's the one thing that needs to happen for me to be happy with my progress? Yes. And if you answer that question and then that questionnaire, we can help you create a strategy to get that way. And we can do all that in 30 minutes, and you'll be amazed at the results. And it doesn't cost you anything.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Great. Thank you. And again, we will put that URL in our show notes for our listeners. And okay, Barbara, we've come to the end of the show, but there's one more question. What should I have asked you that I did not?
Well, you didn't ask me what was the biggest stumbling block to getting rid of clutter.
So let's hear this.
Well, I'll tell you a story. I got a call from a man in Dubai that I had talked to 15 years ago. And at the time, he opened the conversation by saying, organization is my Achilles heel. So I talked to him about how we would be able to help him, but he never agreed to do it. Well, I saw him on LinkedIn recently, and I thought, it would be interesting. I want to know how he overcome it. So I messaged him, and I said, would you have a conversation? He got back and said, I'd love to. So it turns out he's just done amazing things. He raises venture capital. He'd raised over $2 billion in venture capital with he and one assistant. I mean, so He's just done an amazing job. But he said, if I had hired you when we talked, it was over 10 years ago, I would be in a much better place right now. So I said, I have a question for you. What prevented you from doing it? And he said, time. The biggest stumbling block that people have to getting rid of their clutter is that they think it's a much bigger project than it is. I've started a virtual mastermind group now that meets for an hour 5 times in the course of 10 weeks. So it's a 1-hour call over 10 weeks. And each call at the beginning, they identify a project that they could potentially finish in 10 weeks. So we get on for 1 hour. They have 2 weeks to work on it. 1 hour and 2 weeks to work on it. The results that people are getting, one woman had 4 closets full of her own clothes. And by the 3rd session, she had donated over 50% of them.
Wow.
And I asked her, how long did it take you to do that? And she said 6 hours. And she did it by herself. I mean, she didn't have somebody come in and help her by herself. She worked on that in 6 hours. And that is something she said that has plagued her for over a decade.
Wow.
So often we look at organization problems as something really big. And part of what we do, and if we do a complimentary discovery session with people, we help them identify where they can, to use the phrase, get the biggest bang for their buck. How they can get. And then when you're successful in one area, it motivates you to do another. So in that 10-week period, you could finish 4 or 5 projects.
Absolutely.
Because research shows you're 76% more likely to accomplish a goal if you have an accountability partner.
Just like working out.
Absolutely.
If you work out with somebody else.
Exactly the same.
I tend to go to the gym more often.
Yes.
Yeah, that's something. In my case, I have a rule about when it comes to clothing. If I buy something, something has to go out.
Well, my rule is, how does it make me feel? And if it's anything negative, it makes me feel fat or ugly or old or depressed or guilty or anything else, out it goes. Because I tend to buy classic clothes.
Yes.
So I buy expensive suits that will be forever. So some of my clothes are quite old, or like I have a Hawaiian muumuu kind of thing. I had it for 20 years, but it's the kind of thing, if you have a party, you might want it, So I base mine on how does it make me feel. And as long as it's not anything negative, it can, and then it's how much room do I have? So you can keep as much. That's another organizing tip, to identify a certain amount of space for empty jars, for spices, for grocery bags, for makeup, for whatever. And then you say, I'll keep as much as fits in this space. And then if something comes in you have to have and there isn't room, you have to let go of it.
Well, you have a Hawaiian muumuu, and I have a button-down shirt from college.
There you go.
But it makes me happy, and it looks good, so I'm keeping it.
There you go. That's what I mean. The whole point of organization, Trish, is to help you accomplish your work and enjoy your life. Organization in and of itself has no value. It is simply a skill to help you accomplish your work and enjoy your life.
Great. Thank you so much, Barbara. It was so much fun having you on the show. And I hope we will speak again somewhere down the road.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, Trish.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us on Optimal Instinct with Trish. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, head on over to iTunes, subscribe, and if you really enjoy the content, leave us a well-appreciated review. If you are looking to create an environment that partners your desire for more profitable, more productive, and greater referability in client relationships, combined with sustained team morale, then I suggest you head over to clientvaluedemo.com to learn more about the C's value model. Talk soon.